Missouri and Illinois share a border. They share rivers, the Mississippi running between them like a spine connecting and dividing simultaneously. They share history, decades of economic partnership, cultural exchange, and regional identity that blurred the line between neighboring states. They share industry, manufacturing, agriculture, logistics, healthcare. The economic foundations that built both states drew from the same Midwestern soil and served the same Midwestern markets. But they are no longer headed in the same direction. One state is stabilizing quietly, finding equilibrium at modest levels, maintaining function without fanfare, building the kind of durability that does not generate headlines, but does generate long-term outcomes. The other is fighting structural gravity, carrying obligations accumulated over decades, losing population to states that offer what it increasingly cannot, struggling to maintain systems built for a larger, wealthier version of itself. And here is the part no one on either side wants to admit. Missouri is not just surviving next to Illinois anymore. It is slowly replacing it. Not in headlines. Missouri has not become a national story, not in pride. Missourians are not celebrating victory over their neighbors, not in the dramatic ways that would force acknowledgement, but in the numbers, in the migration patterns, in the business decisions, in the quiet calculations that families and companies make when choosing where to build their futures. Tonight, we are breaking down the divide that is widening between these two states and why it matters more than most people realize. Let's rewind to understand how remarkable the current trajectory actually is. For most of the 20th century, the comparison wasn't close. Illinois was the powerhouse. Chicago was the engine that drove not just the state, but the entire Midwest. Missouri was supporting cast, important in regional context, but clearly secondary to its neighbors' dominance. Illinois had financial dominance. Chicago's banks, exchanges, and corporate headquarters made it one of America's most important financial centers. Capital flowed through Illinois in ways that Missouri could only observe. Illinois had manufacturing scale, the factories, the supply chains. The industrial employment that built middle-class America concentrated more heavily in Illinois than in Missouri. Illinois had population density that translated into political leverage. Congressional representation, electoral votes, and national attention all followed from having more people concentrated in more economically productive activity. Missouri was considered slower, smaller, less influential. A nice place, certainly, but not a place that competed with Illinois for regional supremacy. But something changed in the last 2 decades. The shift wasn't loud. No single moment announced that the relationship was transforming. It was gradual. Year after year, small differences accumulated into something significant. Illinois kept carrying the weight it had always carried. Missouri avoided accumulating the same burdens. And over time, that difference in weight began showing up in how the two states functioned. The population story is the one nobody on either side wants to discuss honestly. Illinois has been dealing with persistent out-migration for years. Residents are leaving at a steady pace, not dramatically enough to generate crisis coverage, but consistently enough to reshape the state's trajectory. The people leaving are not random. They are often working-age adults with options, families seeking affordability, professionals seeking opportunity, retirees seeking lower costs. The people with mobility are using it. The people without mobility are staying. That pattern compounds. When working-age residents leave, they take their productivity, their tax payments, and their children with them. The population that remains skews older, more dependent, and less economically active. Missouri has not exploded with growth. Nobody is writing articles about Missouri's population boom. The state is not attracting migration waves that would transform its character, but it has not hollowed out the same way either. Missouri's population has remained relatively stable. There is modest growth in some areas, modest decline in others. The net result is continuity rather than transformation in either direction. That difference matters enormously. When population shrinks, tax bases tighten. The same infrastructure that served larger populations now gets funded by smaller ones. The math does not work without either raising rates on remaining residents or reducing services they depend on. When population shrinks, housing markets become fragile. Too many units for too few buyers creates vacancy, blight, and declining values that affect everyone, including people who planned to build wealth through homeownership. When population shrinks, political tensions rise. Remaining residents fight over shrinking resources. Generational conflicts intensify. The social cohesion that makes communities function frays. Missouri has not surged, but it has not collapsed either. And in the Midwest, in an era where many states are experiencing one outcome or the other, stability is becoming an advantage that should not be underestimated. Compare housing affordability between these two states, and the picture becomes clearer. Missouri's housing costs remain significantly lower across most of the state. Even in metropolitan Kansas City, prices stay manageable compared to major markets elsewhere. Even in growing areas, affordability persists. Illinois, especially around Chicago and the collar counties that surround it, carries burdens that Missouri does not. Higher property taxes add thousands of dollars annually to housing costs. Higher overall housing burdens consume larger shares of income. Greater municipal pressure translates into fees, assessments, and costs that accumulate beyond sticker prices. This creates a quiet migration pattern that does not generate headlines but does shape regional outcomes. Not massive relocation. Nobody is filming moving trucks crossing the Mississippi for dramatic effect. Not headline-grabbing announcements. No press releases declare that families are choosing Missouri over Illinois. But steady movement. Families cross the river and put down roots on the Missouri side. Businesses evaluate alternatives and conclude that Missouri's cost structure makes more sense. Developers adjust where they invest based on where returns seem more reliable. Missouri does not need to boom to benefit from this dynamic. It just needs to stay cheaper. It just needs to remain the more affordable option for people weighing their choices. And it has. Year after year, the affordability gap persists. Year after year, the gap shapes decisions that accumulate into demographic and economic shifts. Illinois still has enormous economic power. Chicago alone generates economic activity that dwarfs anything Missouri can match. The corporate presence, the institutional weight, the financial infrastructure, none of that has disappeared. But companies making location decisions evaluate three things that favor Missouri increasingly. Cost structure. What does it actually cost to operate in this state? Wages, real estate, utilities, taxes, the inputs that determine whether businesses can function profitably. Missouri's cost structure is lighter. Regulatory friction. How difficult is it to do business? Permitting, compliance, bureaucratic navigation, the obstacles that consume time and resources without generating value. Missouri presents fewer obstacles. Long-term tax exposure. What will this state cost in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Companies think in decades. They evaluate not just current rates, but trajectories. Missouri's trajectory looks more stable. Missouri's pitch to business isn't exciting. Lower operating costs, less complexity, predictability. That's not flashy. It does not generate the kind of economic development headlines that politicians love. It does not position Missouri as innovative, cutting-edge, or transformational. But in an era of tightening margins, when companies face pressure to reduce costs wherever possible, predictability beats prestige. The result is a sorting. Illinois retains the corporate giants with global ambitions, and the resources to absorb Illinois costs. Missouri quietly attracts the practical operators, logistics companies, warehousing operations, healthcare systems, and regional headquarters. Not glamorous, but durable. The kind of economic base that persists through cycles rather than collapsing when conditions change. Chicago remains a global city. Its institutions, its infrastructure, its cultural weight are not disappearing. The comparison between Chicago and Kansas City is not close on absolute terms, but Kansas City does not need to compete globally. It competes regionally, and in that lane, it wins increasingly. Lower costs make Kansas City attractive for operations that do not require global city resources. Less congestion makes Kansas City easier to navigate for businesses that value efficiency. Simpler expansion pathways make Kansas City practical for companies that want to grow without fighting bureaucracy. For many mid-sized firms, Kansas City offers 80% of Chicago's functional advantages at a fraction of the cost. That math is compelling. It is the math that is driving decisions, not dramatic relocations announced in press releases, but quiet choices that accumulate into regional economic shifts. Illinois carries long-term fiscal obligations that are extraordinarily heavy. Pension commitments accumulated over decades now consume budget flexibility. The promises made to previous generations of workers must be funded by current and future taxpayers. Missouri's financial structure is lighter. This does not mean Missouri is perfect. Every state carries obligations, and Missouri faces its own fiscal challenges. But the weight is different. The constraint is different. When economic pressure rises, flexibility determines who absorbs the hit and who gets crushed by it. States with room to maneuver can adjust. States without that room face impossible choices. Missouri bends when pressure arrives. Illinois strains. Look at the St. Louis metro area, and you see the divide playing out in real time across a single river, two sides of one city, two tax structures, two policy directions, two sets of economic signals that influence decisions daily. People cross bridges every day. Those crossings are more than commutes. They are economic choices, expressed through where people sleep, where they pay taxes, where they invest in property. Missouri does not need to defeat Illinois in some dramatic contest. It just needs to remain the more comfortable side of the river, the side with lower costs, the side with simpler systems, the side that feels more manageable. And right now, for many families weighing their options, for many businesses evaluating locations, Missouri is exactly that. Before Missourians celebrate, understand something important. Winning by default is not the same as building momentum. Missouri's advantage comes from specific characteristics that require maintenance. Missouri is cheaper. If Missouri's costs rise, if property taxes increase, if housing inflates, if regulatory burden grows, the advantage erodes. Missouri is simpler. If governance becomes more complicated, if bureaucracy expands, if doing business becomes difficult, the advantage disappears. Missouri is stable. If its trajectory changes, if fiscal obligations accumulate, if the patterns that constrained Illinois emerge here as well, the advantage reverses. Missouri did not build its current position through innovation or excellence. It built its position through avoidance, avoiding the pressures that now weigh Illinois down. That is valuable, but it is not permanent. If Missouri stops maintaining the characteristics that created advantage, the advantage vanishes faster than it accumulated. Here's the hard truth that both states need to hear. Missouri didn't outcompete Illinois with innovation. It didn't explode with growth that attracted national attention. It didn't become a darling of economic development professionals or a model that other states study. Missouri simply avoided the pressures that are now weighing Illinois down. It didn't accumulate the obligations. It didn't build the systems that require constant growth just to function. It didn't create the conditions that force residents and businesses to leave. And sometimes, in a country where so many states built systems that require perpetual expansion, avoiding collapse is enough to win the region. The divide is widening, not dramatically, not in ways that generate national coverage or force political response, but steadily, year after year, the gap between these two states grows wider. The question isn't whether Missouri is replacing Illinois as the more functional option for people and businesses making regional choices. That replacement is already happening in the decisions being made daily. The question is whether Missouri knows what to do with the opportunity, whether the state will build on its position or coast on advantages that could erode, whether stability will become a foundation for something better or a ceiling for something that stagnates. Drop your state in the comments. Are you seeing this shift? Have you made decisions about where to live, where to work, where to invest based on the dynamics between these two states? Or is this overblown? Does Illinois retain advantages that this analysis underweights? Does Missouri's position look weaker from inside than from outside? Your perspective matters. The people living these dynamics understand them better than any analysis can capture. And if you want the uncomfortable comparisons that nobody else is making, the analysis that examines regional relationships honestly rather than repeating comfortable narratives, subscribe to Hard Truth Untold. Because the shifts that matter most often happen quietly. Understanding them before they become obvious is the difference between preparation and surprise.